And so is this podcast, because welcome back to an episode 3 of Ugritone's wacky podcast.
Yes.
This is Rondi Rock from Ugritone, and joining here is my main man, Aaron Cloutier.
Hello.
So how are you feeling this fine Friday morning? Afternoon, actually.
Yeah. Thank you for reminding me, because I actually wouldn't have noticed. I'm actually super off kilter today. Just a weird week, just a very strange week. But yeah, I am here, and I am excited to be talking about what we're going to be talking about today. So,
and what are we talking about today? And that is songwriting in a speedy, or should we say in a condensed environment. Whereas it's time or space or just in general, you just want to get the freaking song out of your head and into your MP3 player.
Right. I'd like to think of it as like maybe
childbirth.
That's
taking a dump.
No, I was gonna say more focus on like organization and efficiency as opposed to mega speed, just because if you focus on those two things first, it'll likely lead to a speedier process. So speed,
those two words are not in the Ugritone vocabulary, by the way.
Organized and efficient.
Yep.
Well then,
is that German?
I really apologize for saying words that don't make sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's what we're going to be talking about, and I'm excited.
Yes.
So,
what is a song?
What is a song?
Should be start off real philosophically. Song is it's a piece of culture. It's the piece that came out of you or someone else that starts to live a life within you or within someone else.
You weren't kidding about that childbirth thing. Okay, that makes sense now. Okay. Yeah, totally.
It's a living organism.
It is. It really is. And honestly, man, it's the reason why I never had kids. Well, one of them. One of the reasons why I never had kids, because I don't know. I always felt like that. You hear how people talk about their kids and how it's really incredibly fulfilling and how it changes them. And I just always felt like, well, I'm a songwriter, so I'm good. Yeah. Like,
plus it's like if you're an engineer, it's like, son, your head was mixed all wrong.
Right.
Your legs don't have the delay that I want.
Let me mix you up a brand new head.
Plastic surgery. Yeah. Well, that got off of the wrong foot right off the bat. But
no, I like it. Well, this wavelength is good. I think we welcome the audience to come get weird with us today.
Yeah. Well, there was a disclaimer that this was the wacky podcast, not the. If you want to listen to Bill Mayer, that would probably be more. I don't even know the word. Something professional,
cohesive,
on point,
following a strict narrative instead of this meandering forest that we are currently growing on this particular show.
Yeah,
but
listen. Yeah, what goes through your head or through your body, like when you're writing a song? That's something I always I'm just curious.
That's a good question, actually. So, like, what goes through my head?
It is a damn good question.
When I'm writing a song, I mean, usually, flow state is kind of a popular term these days, but that's the best way to kind of describe the feeling that I get once I really get an idea that I like, and I just start, exploring ways to, expand on it or try looking at it from different perspectives, creating, variations on that one idea, and then just seeing if it leads down, a rabbit hole. And that whole flow state is it's almost like I'm not sure what's going on through my head because I'm in that state of just like, yep, I'm just riding the stream of consciousness. So to me, it's the best feeling in the world. It's like, it's an addiction at this point. Like I'm addicted to creating stuff because I love being 100% focused on this one thing.
Yeah.
What about you?
I don't. Well, that was a very scientific yet very very non-scientific way of putting it. I think.
I'll take that as a compliment. Thank you.
Yeah. Myself, like I think it's more like I'm speaking a language that I am fluent, but also kind of unfamiliar with. Like it's sort of like it's a
like
weird.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, no. It's like the unnamed feeling. Like you don't really know. Like what the hell am I trying to do here? Sometimes it's very like crystal clear. You know exactly what you're doing, and sometimes you're just like, actually, I'm gonna play this guitar backwards to see if it's like a scientific experiment.
Absolutely.
within your feelings, I think.
Yeah, totally. I mean, that's what I love about it. It's kind of like, just to kind of piggyback off of what you were just saying, it's kind of like you know exactly how to do what you're going to do, but you don't exactly know what's going to happen, right?
Yeah.
And that is kind of like one of the best parts about it. It's just like my favorite part about that is just like looking at the finished whatever it is that day, like what if it's just a riff or if it's a flushed out, you know, maybe it's a verse or maybe it's a thing that you don't even know what to do with, but you look at it at the end and you just think like, holy shit, how the fuck did I get here? You know, like that. That is kind of like, I don't know, to me that's what it's all about. And then from there, you know, the riches will follow. Right?
Yeah. Well, clearly Aaron's joining us from his Bel Air mansion in New Jersey.
Right. I had to change my shirt because I spilled caviar all over it. The decadence.
Yeah, you're so rich they had to move the original Bel Air from California to New Jersey piece by piece.
Nice.
So
Rebuild
to make it
Bel
East
Air.
Coast, West Coast kind of. We built Bel Air.
That's awesome.
Yeah. But yeah, songwriting is and should be. It's like a fine wine, where it's basically you're trying to enjoy every moment of it, however bitter or inconvenient the overall flow would be. Like in a way, I guess like childbirth, you know, it's not a very pleasant scene, but the result that you get out of it, you know,
I've heard,
overrides the cost.
Unless the kid's a little shit.
But you only really find out after they learn to talk and do shit.
It's also the same with the song, I guess, you know, like sometimes, well, here's, all right. I don't want to, I think that's where it ends, actually, in comparison with like children and music, because, you know, music is also a filtration process, right? Like sometimes you'll come up with just a song that's like, you know, this isn't, and you can throw it away. You can't throw away a baby.
True. You can give away a baby,
right?
Sell away a baby,
right? You really shouldn't. You really shouldn't.
Yeah.
So, but the thing with,
but that's like, yeah.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
The cool thing about like the whole filtration process with songwriting, though, is even if you have like this idea that's kind of meh, what I love about it is that it's getting that out is super important. It's kind of like, you know, since I've already, I don't think I'm gonna make it anything worse than saying like a dead baby joke, but like, it's basically like you're getting your colon cleansed, right? You're just getting rid of all the crap that's in your brain, and that will make room for the good stuff to emerge afterwards, right? Like you have this again, it's a filtration process. Like maybe the song isn't that great, but it makes way for the better ideas that are in the back of your mind.
Feel you.
Yeah.
I see. Yeah, the colon cleanse is definitely a good example, because it's a shitty process, but man, oh man, does it help.
So you say it's a shitty process. So I'm very curious as to like what makes you say that. Like if there's anything particular that, gets in the way or anything like that, or
do that on a day off, because when you gotta go, man. I wouldn't take it. Say like you're traveling like across the country from like New York to LA. I wouldn't do it on a flight or before boarding the plane, because it's you need a steady access.
We're still talking about songwriting, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
Yeah, like after the filtration's done, like one of the angles that I kind of like, say like the song is written, recorded, and released. Now, do you still like hold ownership to your music, or do you think that after that like sure you get all the money that the song's generating, but the true ownership,
like the emotional ownership,
really would then the people, say like Journey or REO Speedwagon, they tour the amphitheaters across North America every single summer, and people still go see them. Can't fight this feeling, or Don't Stop Believe. Do you think that song belongs to the people and the greater public?
Yes.
Or do you think it's still Journey? I
would hope
Journey see us.
Right. Like, I would hope that if I was in Journey and I was performing those songs, that I still have some kind of emotional connection with it, because otherwise you're doing a 9-to-5 job that you don't like anymore, So hopefully they retain a level of that. But on the other hand, if you have an audience that like shows up for those songs, that probably, validates both you and the song in a different way, right? Like, yeah, it just kind of refreshes your whole perspective on this. It's like, oh wow, they're having this reaction to this music, and that kind of, just really refreshes you in that sense. Whereas, if you're playing to 3 people and then they walk out, that's a little disheartening. And then maybe, after so much of that, you'd be like, all right, you know what, this one's just staying at home with me now. Like this, we're not going out anymore. It's a good question.
It's a shame they didn't like my oven mittens made out of little kittens tango.
Wow.
Shit.
Wow. Sounds good.
It was a PETA 2 party, so I don't know what went wrong.
Wow.
But you see that's kind of like what I'm saying about like the ownership of the song. Say like the Born in the USA.
Yeah.
And then every like right-wing Republican, like,
it's interesting, man,
Stars and Stripes, because they kind of take it as their own, because they can only digest the, say, Born in the USA. Right. Whereas like if you look between the verses, it's actually it's like, it's damn great I was born here, but man, does it suck sometimes.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting, because like, yeah, so you're commenting on the fact that like music is subjective and everybody kind of pulls their own little meaning out of it in whatever way it suits them. Maybe it's like surface level stuff, or maybe, they actually resonate with the real message that the artist is saying.
Or just for the fact that it's saying that this is cool in a song, whereas it actually the writer's intention was the exact opposite,
Right.
So it's like Born in the USA is not a glorifying song about being proud to have been born in the USA. It's more of protest.
Right, exactly. Yeah, it's more John
Irony.
Fogerty than it is
It's like-
John Mellencamp, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because like Mellencamp would like was it Ain't That America? Right? That's definitely like
Yep.
well to my understanding, I'm not a fan of Mellencamp. So like that's your jurisdiction. You would know better than I would. But yeah, okay. So
I'm a melon head.
Please tell me that's what he calls his fans.
Well, I think that's what the fans call themselves. I've seen merch. I went to see him 2 years ago in Saginaw, a little further up north from Detroit, and I would have bought a hoodie that said "I'm a melon head."
Man, I don't know what to say to that.
And funny fact about that show, I drank a lot of beer, so towards the end when Pink Houses the Ain't That America song, I was one of the Ain't That America, you and me.
So it's
Standing up, singing along, and
I didn't even know that it was called Pink Houses. It's called Pink Houses?
yep.
Well,
A little known fact.
I did not know that.
Yeah. But like, how can one like say like protect a song from becoming like something that it's not, you know?
I think the only thing you can
like,
do is do what like Ozzy did, you know? Remember like the whole Inquisition during the with Dee Snider and Frank Zappa and
oh right, the I
Tipper
don't remember
Gore and the whole-
Suicide Solution.
Exactly.
It was just the Ozzy song, and it was a Better by You, better than me, Judas Priest.
Right. And like all that. And the only thing I think you could do if you have a platform, if you have the media's attention, which he did, is just to set the record straight. That's all you can really do, right? Because again, it's like, you know, I mean, back during that time, I have no idea how it is now. I would hope that, you know, children are taught to think critically and think for themselves and understand that, like, you know, it's not, I don't know, man. Like maybe it's hard for me to actually say because for some reason I just knew that that's not what that song was about. You know what I mean? Just somehow I felt that it wasn't promoting suicide. It wasn't doing anything like that. And maybe that was just me being, you know, maybe that's just like a suspension of disbelief or just some kind of denial. But I don't know. Somehow I just didn't know because I resonated with the artist and I just thought like, yeah, they wouldn't say that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And it's kind of like the writing about the horrors. It's sometimes like there's no room for sugarcoating it either,
Right.
you know?
Right.
So it's really hard to talk about, say, like World War II without mentioning the horrors that people went through.
Right.
You know, there's really no place to just like, oh, I guess they were happy, you know.
And there's a way to do it.
They were not.
No, of course not. Of course not. And it was horrible. And, you know, collectively, we all know it was horrible. There's just a small percentage of people that thought it was necessary, right? But like, take Slayer, for example, right? They wrote Angel of Death. It was about Joseph Mengele.
Yeah.
And they weren't, and they've gone on record in interviews saying like it wasn't for this guy. It wasn't like, you know, they weren't propping him up saying like he was a hero. It was more of like a, you know, a documentary. It was like just saying like this happened and this is the, you know, and obviously it makes for really intense subject matter for a metal song.
Absolutely.
It's perfectly.
If the first song in the song is the first word in the song is Auschwitz,
right. It's just like boom.
You're in for a ride, man.
Right. But and Jeff Hanneman was talking about it too. He's kind of like, you know, there's all these things of like, you know, oh, he should have been killed for what he did, this and that. And he said, yeah, to me, that was obvious. Like, why write about the obvious? You know, just like, it's not that provocative to write about what we all feel as far as like that really controversial topic. Like, don't tell us what we already know, right? Like,
exactly.
It doesn't make for that interesting.
Yeah, so like writing through the eyes of the villain,
right?
It's been kind of like a common Slayer angle.
Totally. Yeah, they did Jihad, right? They did that song where it was from the perspective of
Disciple.
What was Disciple? See, I don't know what that one was.
I hate everyone equally, and you can't take that out of me. God hates us all.
See, I thought that was actually kind of progressive. You know what I mean? Like, that kind of is. Like, I hate everybody equally. There's no discrimination. Like, to me, that's kind of like, yeah, that's equal. That's I think that's fair. I can resonate with that. I hate most of everybody, so
they're there.
But my point with all that too is that it just makes for more interesting subject matter. It just gets you thinking about, like, you know, it's like watching a horror movie. You're not going to go do those things that the horror movie depicted, right? But it's like, there's a reason why you go and watch that. To me, it's similar lines, you know, slightly different, but it's similar.
Exactly. And my question for you right now is, like, how the hell did we get here?
At this point in the
conversation, supposed to talk about songwriting, and we just took a really long track that went across the station, and people missed their stops.
See, I think it's related because you know, when Jeff was writing that song, right? I'm sure. Well, it makes me wonder if there was, you know, any fear of touching on such a controversial topic, right?
Yeah.
And I've definitely been in those cases where I've been afraid to write about certain things just because I personally didn't want to be associated with those things, right? Yeah. Because I don't believe in those things, but it takes a kind of courage to be true to the idea and to get it out there. And, you know, honestly, that's something I'm still kind of working towards. I definitely don't think I'm there yet. But what do they call it? Responsibility of the artist. Yeah, it's
yeah, and I think the responsibility should be a two-way street. You know, if someone's like you mentioned, like horror movies, they're not meant so that you can recreate Michael Myers and try to go after Jamie Lee Fox,
right?
Jamie Lee Curtis. Sorry. Yeah,
that's a meme in the making, dude. I can't wait.
I bet a lot of guys do try to go after, not with a knife though, but like you're not supposed to like accepting the art as and kind of like make it your own. And if you're a version of turning the art into a manual, then I think you'd probably have issues with lots of other areas in life too, you know?
Yeah. And that's just it. It's kind of like, it goes back to how one was raised, what the example was set by their parents, all that sort of stuff. Like when I was a kid, you know, I was told about what was right and wrong. And so when I saw a band like Slayer, you know, I was definitely shocked by it, but I also knew, you know, I wasn't inspired to go kill anybody. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't, you know, but again, I think that goes back to feeling the vibe of the band and the actual intent. Whereas like a band like Deicide scared the shit out of me when I was a kid. Like Deicide freaked me out so much because they were, you know, they were Satanists. They were, you know, they were the real deal when it came to that. That was their belief structure, and you know, they dialed it to 11. They just went to the extreme. And then have you heard about any of their early show antics with like rotting meat on stage and all that?
I have not actually.
Yeah, there were some interviews with the original guitar players. They were talking about like the early days, and you know, they would do that. They get wherever they got this rotting meat from, but they made it part of their show, their stage show. And yeah, just being like an impressionable young, like 12-year-old, just learning about this band was just like, oh my God, they're terrifying. Like every other word in, was it Sacrificial Suicide was Satan, right? So I'm just like, God. To this day, I still think about those days. I'm just like, man, it was intense. But I like Deicide.
They're amazing.
Yeah. Although I haven't kept current.
Actually, yeah. I actually just recently realized that I probably like Deicide more than I like Cannibal Corpse, if I'm being completely frank.
Now this is a conversation.
For me, like, because for me personally, like Chris Barnes' era of Cannibal Corpse, especially the Bleeding, Tomb of the Mutilated, and the one before Butchered at Birth, I would have to say was probably the title.
Yes,
those three are like the death metal to me. After that, it's like Corpse Grinder, far superior as a vocalist as far as like delivery and like that chainsaw kind of spitting bullets type of delivery. But I don't know, like something just kind of and then like Deicide later on with like Scars of the Crucifix, which has one of the wackiest music videos ever made. Motorcycles, guns, and death metal. Like, holy shit, it
sounds like Florida.
Epic. Yeah. But yeah, as a side note, I'm not saying Cannibal hasn't produced quality music. I'm just saying that I just recently figured that maybe I like D a little bit better than the C.
Interesting. I mean, The Bleeding was an incredible record. Butchered at Birth is awesome. Eaten Back to Life was great too. And Tomb of the Mutilated was the first one that I heard. Yeah, that one terrified me. The way that Chris wrote.
That's where the stars align perfectly. Everything, songwriting, lyrics, just the sound of the album. Like, that's what I spent actually about a year ago, started working on the old school death metal expansion for Cult 2. And so it was The Bleeding, Tomb of the Mutilated, just looping. And I was like trying to like, how can I recreate this drum sound? And perhaps I succeeded, perhaps I failed. Remains to be seen, but that's the recent self-discovery that I made. But now, like going back to songwriting.
Yes, songwriting.
So yeah, it's like the angle that we were kind of planning on for this one, without going into Jeff Hanneman and all that. But so it's the speed that really, unfortunately, kind of sets the level. And we're both, myself and Aaron, we're kind of in a position where we have to produce music in a very tight schedule. Say like when we're about to release something, some days like I have to make 5 jams a day, and that's not always easy.
Right. Yeah.
And so I'm going to give you the prologue or the monologue or the dialogue. Do you think speed is your friend, not the drug, the speed as a time frame? Do you think speed is your friend when you're making music, or is it your enemy? Let's peel the banana from that end.
Yeah, it definitely depends. It depends on what stage of the process you're at, I think, like, I think it's really important to work fast if you have a level of ability, like if you have enough technical ability to facilitate your musical ideas, right? If you have a good ear, and you have at least, some kind of idea of what you're going for. And obviously you have your influences and you have the things that you're into and the stuff that you want to, express and whatnot. But I think it's really, really beneficial, especially for beginners to, and when I say beginners, I mean like beginners in songwriting, not necessarily like beginner guitar players or beginner singers, but there is definitely things that you could do in that regard as well. But let's say I'm talking about, just, let's say it's like a 17-year-old kid who's an intermediate guitar player. And he's looking into getting, started with songwriting. He has like all these little riffs. He has, basic ideas, but he doesn't know how to put them together. I think it's really, 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 really helpful to just learn how to make quick decisions regardless of the outcome, because it's really, really, really important to strengthen that muscle, that decision-making muscle, because that will, create momentum. That will prevent you getting writer's block. It'll prevent the whole, clogging up of, your whole, it'll prevent you from being too precious with your idea before you even get the idea out. I was just telling you this before we started recording, right? That when I first started writing songs and all that sort of stuff, most of the time I was just writing music in my head. And, I'm a space cadet at times, and I daydream. So I have a lot of these like little loose ideas floating around. And I wouldn't write them down. I wouldn't, record them, other than like, maybe saying something into a handheld recorder or something like that, and then forgetting about it. But oftentimes I would just think about the idea, and then I'd be very critical. I'd just say like, no, that sucks. That's not going to be anything. And then I'd just kind of get rid of it. And I think that is extremely detrimental now, because it kind of closes the door before you even have a chance to run through it. You don't have a chance to actually like flush out the idea and just see it as it is when it's out of your head. Because once you get the idea out of your head, you just have a completely different perspective on it. And then from there, you can just see it clearly. And then even if you don't like it, you can try to find ways to develop it, or you just leave it by. And maybe that's just an idea that you revisit later, when you have a fresher perspective. Maybe you go for a walk and get another idea, be like, ooh, that part fits with that part. Awesome. And then you go back and then you change things, and then it can happen like that. So that's where I think, working quickly, making quick decisions can really be beneficial, especially in the beginning. Right. So anything to add on that?
That's you just nailed the point that I think really hit home for me, which is the indecisiveness and growing that muscle to really like pull the trigger. Like, no, this is something in my body tells me, my head's spinning the right way, my hands are shaking and my ass is shaking, something in your body just tells you that this is the right thing to do. And growing a spine, I don't know like what to call it, but it's like the enlightenment, something in you tells you that this is a keeper. And I think that's kind of like in the digital age, and I'm not sure if it's always been a case, like people just being, whether that's become a little too convenient, like why record anything else than a DI when you're recording guitars, so then we can kind of like decide what works and what doesn't work, and but that's more in the engineering side of things.
But even on that, right, that can hold you back too, because you have that whole option paralysis. You have this DI, and it's like, we have all these different, things. It's like, a lot of engineers will talk about just commit to a sound, and, that requires you to dial in the best possible sound you can, right? So once you finally do that, then that is done. That's what you have to work with. And in the long run, that will save more time, I think, and save a lot more stress too. I need to take my own advice with that, by the way.
That's the greatest oxymoron in history of music. I should take my own advice, but
Yeah.
you become blinded and deafened by the noise that you're making. So it's easier to say than it is to actually do what you're saying.
Well, I mean, I'll put it to you this way. It's much easier for me to make those kinds of decisions when I'm doing a project for somebody else as opposed to something for myself, right? Like I have a solo project that is like incredibly, personal to me. And I dread the recording process with that particular project. I don't dread the recording process for most things at all, but when it comes to my own personal project, I dread it, man. Like I have to prepare for it, and it's like because there's so much emotional investment in it, it's weird. It's so weird, but yeah, I forgot where I was going with that.
Yeah. Don't we all sometimes?
Right.
It might as well be the punchline of this podcast. I don't know where I was going with that cast.
Dude, that could be the title. That should be the title of the show.
Potential.
Yeah.
So we'll call backlist. But yeah, it's just like being your own worst enemy, and when you're creating art for yourself by yourself. And is there a way to, you see, because you've studied the actual science of songwriting more than I probably have, so like what can we do to combat that? Like just like get drunk if it still sounds good, but then try it sober, hungover, like the filtration.
So you're asking like what to do to get in the zone when it comes to songwriting? Is that what you're saying, or are you saying something else? Did I lose you?
I'm not sure.
Oh, there you are. Okay.
I think I just went to the Mars and back.
Welcome back.
But kind of like the rope pull game, like, at the county fair where you like pull the rope and then, you got a teddy bear or you got a freaking Def Leppard bubble gum, or a Bon Jovi toothpick.
So I'm trying to see what you mean by that. I have no idea what you're talking about.
I need to.
I'm sorry.
Happens to me every day. Just kind of like, indecisiveness. Like, how do you combat? Like,
yeah. Okay.
It's a very, very long way to put such a simple thing, but yes.
I gotcha. I mean, in a word, just record it. Like just whatever the idea is. If it's in your head, even if it seems really bad, it's still kind of circling around in your mind. You really won't know until you hear it back. That I'm a big believer of that. Like you have to get it down, you have to get it recorded, and you just have to listen back and just see truly. Like here's a story that happened like a little while ago. I used to teach at a music school in New Jersey, and I had a coworker that was right next door to me. We became friends. He's a brilliant guitar player, and he started like really focusing on songwriting. He started his second band, and it was this this raging Swede death project. And he would occasionally come in to ask me questions about songwriting and arrangement because he was self-producing everything. And he was just kind of like, he just wanted a second opinion on things. And he'd be like, hey, so I've got this song and I've got two versions of it. And then I think I have a third version and I'm not sure which one I really want to go with. And I just told him like, look, you need to record that other version too, so you can really hear it, because right now it's just this, this thing floating in your mind, and it's not concrete yet. You need to just flush it out so you can really compare and contrast everything and see what sounds best to you. And the only reason why I know that is because I learned that on my own. Like I experiment all the time, and I just, I got into the habit of like, I guess I got too frustrated with not knowing, if that makes sense. It's just kind of like I got so sick of just having the idea trapped in my head without taking an action, and basically got sick of wasting time. So I just figured, it's way faster just to like get this idea out right now and hear it and just move on if you need to move on, or you run with it if you need to run with it. It's just, it's worth the extra little bit of time. It's really not going to take much time at all. And the way that you can record it, there's a number of different ways, right? You could just, put it in your DAW. These days, man, when I'm sitting on the couch just fiddling around with the acoustic, I just have the iPhone in front of me and I film myself playing it so I don't forget the finger positions and like where I am on the fretboard. And then I just get the tune down. And that to me seems like the most efficient way of getting the ideas down. And then,
okay, so that's like an old school modern way of because like I've seen when Metallica, they were doing the Load album, and James was driving in his pickup, and he had that like little tape machine that people like what the hell do you call those things for, like police interrogations? You press a button and it's more meant for like speech because it's portable.
Yeah. Yep.
Like that auto, like, you know what I mean?
I think I have it somewhere.
Yeah. Dictation recorder or something like that. And he was just driving around and
Totally. Totally. Exactly. It can be anything. And, that requires you to not be so self-conscious, not to take yourself so seriously. Or if you're really shy, just, find a good place to do it where you won't be seen by anybody or anything like that,
Yeah.
But yeah, it's super important to be opportunistic with those things too. As soon as they come into your mind, like do whatever you can. Like I remember being in an elevator and then there's this drum beat in my head. I'm like, oh crap. So I'm like holding groceries in one hand and I have my phone in the other, and I'm trying to record it and then tap on the back of the phone. All this is just like, yeah. And then when that didn't work, I just like do something like, into the phone.
Yeah. So as the interruptory question, so would you recommend for those who might be struggling with that, just like kind of do like different levels of like, say like not all ideas belong to the DAW, kind of like
absolutely
filtrate your like do the old school pen and paper or the dictation machine or iPhone, and if that still sounds good played back, put it in a DAW. Because I know like for me sometimes like the empty DAW, when I look at the Cult 2, it's looking back at me and tell me what to play, and I'm like, I got all these freaking like drum beats in my head that some of them I know how to play, some of them I know how to program, and some of them I know how to play and then program. But like there's something, it's kind of like the white line fever. No, that's cocaine.
No, like the blank page thing, right? Like you're staring at a blank page. And it's the same thing. But like, I mean, there's a really good book that talks about this a little bit too. Oh God. It's either Show Your Work or Steal Like an Artist. But the author, his name is Austin Kleon.
It's a brilliant title.
Yeah, it's great. Austin Kleon's the author. It's one of those two books. And they're I'm not an affiliate of him or anything like that, but like it's very much worthwhile picking up a book. It's like super, it's a super thin book and it's a quick read and it's super helpful with this. But basically he talks about how he has two separate offices. Like it showed a snapshot of his office where one side to the left was his computer and all his digital gear and all that. And then on the other side was like a table with, construction paper or paint, all the artistic hands-on materials and all that sort of stuff. And for a really good reason, because like I totally resonate with what you're saying about the DAW, because being in front of a screen just like sucks your soul out of your body incrementally. So it's really hard to, try to come up with something organic unless you're already really comfortable with it, But yeah. I'm trying to think now. Like, I don't know if I ever just pull up a blank session and then just start writing from scratch. I have to be away from the computer, I feel like, most times. And honestly, man, you know what? Where I get most of my ideas and what I consider to be like the ones that I'm most excited about are usually when I'm walking in nature, specifically, like in the woods or anywhere close to nature. And there's some interesting studies on this. Not to pimp out another podcast, but there's one called The Bulletproof Musician. And it's this guy who is a professor in performance, and he's also a professor at Juilliard, and he studies, performance of all kinds. And he had an article about how like nature walks in particular would lead to more creative ideas. So yeah. Check that out, people, if you're interested. But I like, it's so funny because I don't want to sound like the guy like, yeah, I was doing that before I heard about this, but I was like, yeah. I thought I was a weirdo and like that I was alone in that, but there really is something to that. Like just, get outside, get out of your apartment, get out of your room, clear your head. Because you're taking in stimulus when you're doing that, right? Like, you might not even think that you are, but you're getting stimulated by different things. So, getting out in nature can, calm your mind down and make you all of a sudden start to listen to yourself again. Maybe you have a bunch of ideas in the back of your head, but there's too much noise, in front of your face on the computer, or maybe you're distracted by social media or whatever, So getting out and getting your head clear, dude, that's my go-to. Like every single time. Yeah.
But that's kind of like interesting going into like the nature effect, because now that I think of like bands for like the Beach Boys, for example, like it's called surf rock, but it's not called surf rock because they sing about, I guess they kind of sing about surfing a little more than they should, but surfing in the USA. But there's just something oceanic about their sound. And I think, because they grew up on the shore, the Pacific Ocean shoreline, that the ocean had an impact on like bum 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 bum. It's like, it's kind of like something about like the waves are pulling you back, some like really wacky stuff. But
well, how could it not, like, right? Like the environment just influences your output. So if your environment, that's why, like, I think screen, it's like, no, you got to change that.
All I'm saying is they should pull all the Nashville artists away from those islands, because I'm sick and tired of that.
I haven't really heard that
escapism coconut groove that they put on these. I like more of like there's dirt under my boots.
Right. I mean, well, that would be like more the solid beat to the location, right? Like,
I guess.
Well, not maybe like not Nashville anymore. Nashville's turning into a mini Vegas, so now everything's gonna sound like oh God, what's his name? Oh, the lounge singer in Vegas. Oh, it's gonna bother me. It'll come later.
Yeah, but like it's sort of like Kenny Chesney first started it, like sipping on a coconut rum, kind of like introducing the calypso kind of Caribbean style. And when they did when the sun goes down, it's like Zach Brown band's doing it, Little Big Town's doing it, everybody. I'm like, where's the heartland?
Right.
And all this. I like they still probably have plenty of songs about like some dirt roads and Bud Lights and Silverados, but I don't know, man.
I guess it's their level of progression, right? I don't know. I don't listen to any of that stuff.
To cater to like all the Americans who hop on a Carnival cruise and they go to all these exotic islands like Punta Cana and Dominican and like Jamaica, and then they go there to listen to Zach Brown band's Jamaican reggae song. It's kind of
it's a way to ease into the transition.
Yeah. Or it's like, hey, if you could just shut that Bud Light shit for a while and actually listen to what the island, and that's like a little note here. I was not a big fan of reggae until I hopped on one of those Carnival cruises, and it had a stop in Montego Bay in Jamaica. It's disputable whether I actually went to saw real Jamaica, but I went to Jamaica for about a half a day, however long the excursions are. But and when I saw them, I think it was called Mystic Mountain, where they have that kind of like a jungle coaster, the bobsled thing, and eating jerk chicken at the top of the mountain and just seeing the nature and the people. Then once I got back on the boat, I was like, it like started resonating,
right?
It's like, holy shit, I get it now,
right?
So you had to go see to yourself, like, why is this music coming from this specific region, and why is there, like, young Finnish dudes making reggae? That I could never understand because it did not resonate to me. But once I went to Jamaica and saw like locals play it with the steel drums and all that kind of stuff,
right?
Impact.
There's that
right
authenticity
away
to it. That I mean,
or the jerk chicken, which was excellent. Never had a better jerk chicken in my life.
I bet, and I'm sure that influenced things. Like, oh, my mood is so much more open to new experiences.
Yeah. The only thing that you got to tip a lot in Jamaica. That's kind of
okay. Good to know. I've never been to Jamaica. I don't know, man. I don't know. There's a lot I don't know about Jamaica, but I've been made aware about like the intense poverty there, and I always just felt weird about taking a trip to the resort parts of Jamaica, just because I feel like I would feel guilty. I don't know, but maybe my hope would be that would actually help combat the poverty. Hopefully, I don't know. You know what? If I ever go, I'll make a donation.
Are you a fan of the James Bond movies, or have you seen The Dr. No?
No, I haven't.
Actually, majority of the film locations that were in the film, they were actually on the way to the Mystic Mountain from Montego Bay. Like the villain is like a lair of evil. That's like an oil refinery or something on the coast of the highway on the way there. And I actually only realized that after I came back, like, where have the fuck have I seen that building before? And I was watching The Dr. No, and it's like, holy shit, that's the place.
I'll have to look into it.
Yep, been there, done that. Yeah. And another angle I want to kind of bring up to the thing is talking about speed, and one great benefit from like working at a steady pace is this is more of a mixing, but I guess it might unfold into this. It's the mixing legend, Chris Lord-Alge. I've heard that. Well, he's mixed hundreds of records, so he can pull it off like that. But he mixes really fast. Like, he says that if I can complete it in an hour, it's not going to come out. And his reasoning for that is that it after an hour of like playing it back 20, 30 times, section by section, it's no longer fresh. The impact's gone.
Right.
You shoot it up.
Right. You've got the I guess it's the emotional fatigue. It's not even ear fatigue, right? It's not necessarily, your hearing is being compromise. Well, depends on how loud he listens, right? I heard that he listens at
real
conversational
low
levels. Yeah.
Yeah, you can hear the tapping.
Right. That was a game
over
changer
it.
for me when I heard
Same.
that and I started applying it to my mix.
I've started applying it since, not because CLA said so, but because I tried it out and did it for myself, and I'm like, and the other thing that he says, like, well, if it's going to sound big on low volume, hey, imagine how it's going to sound like when it's cranked all the way up.
Yeah, man, it's the Fletcher Munson curve. Yeah. You know what?
Yeah, man.
But that's what made sense to me, because he was talking about how listening at low volumes, and that's the thing. For those of you who don't know, the Fletcher Munson curve, here's the educational part of the program. Fletcher Munson curve basically says, like, the higher in volume a sound source goes, the more pronounced the low and the high frequencies are. So if you're mixing at really high volumes and thinking that it sounds good, chances are it's probably going to sound a little different when you bring it to other, like, let's say it sounds good on your speakers, but you bring it to your car and it's going to be completely different.
Yeah.
So like with Chris Lord-Alge saying that whole thing about like mixing at low volumes, it just, yeah, man, when I heard that, it clicked. I was just like, oh, hell yes. That makes so much sense. It's beautiful. I feel like that's the single most valuable piece of advice I've ever heard in mixing.
Yeah. And now we've reshared it for you. Taking full credit. Actually, it was me.
Yeah, it was Ron.
Yeah.
It was Ron.
You know it.
Lord Rock.
That does have a catchier impact. I might have to rechange myself.
Or just Lord myself. Ron Rock,
Yeah, like Puff Daddy, P Diddy, Snoop Dogg, Snoop Lion.
Old Dirty Bastard.
I got like two more.
Big Baby Jesus.
Yeah,
right. That one was my favorite.
Big Daddy Funk.
Big Daddy Funk.
But yeah, it's like speed can definitely, in that sense, like when you're trying to like make magic, if like magic tricks, like even David Blaine or David Copperfield, if you see that 15 times, it's starting to lose its impact, emotional impact on you. It's like,
exactly.
Guy goes through a Great Wall of China, so fucking what? No.
Right, exactly. No, you hit the nail on the head. It's the emotional impact of you get sick of it, It's just, it becomes, and it becomes an earworm for sure, right? And then it just becomes a plague for the rest of the day, and you're just like, oh, okay, just know. That's why, like, I had an interesting conversation with an engineer today where I asked him, because, like, he's way more experienced than I am, just way more experienced, and has mixed for notable names in heavy music and whatnot, and knows his stuff, really good at what he does. But I asked him, like, the length of time that he spends on a mix, and he said anywhere from 6 to 8 hours. And to me, I don't know, just maybe I'm naive, or maybe I'm just elementary in my thinking about mixing, but to me that just seemed ridiculously long. I was like, how can you be productive after, to me, I'm a spaz. So I'd be lucky to last 4 hours, but it's kind of like for the same reasons that you're talking about, like not only the emotional impact, but just like losing perspective on what you're trying to do, even if you're following step by step with everything, like, I don't know. I do think it's a certain type that it takes to be an engineer, as far as like being like a studio engineer, like the traditional type of studio engineer, right? Where it's very like, assembly line, almost not assembly line, but like just crank it out. But there's a level of enjoyment that I feel like I would miss from that. I don't know, man. I'm too
these days
emotional.
like you can just make it straight to these days you can just make it straight to the producer.
Right. Yeah.
Yep. I wrote one demo. I'm a producer. Hit me up.
Yeah, I mean, it depends, I guess.
I mean, ain't that fucking convenient? It's like you don't have to get the coffee maker brushing off the console. like a caddy kind of gig first, and then go to assistant engineer, senior engineer.
A little bit of that is great, right? But
chief engineer.
Yep.
Yeah.
The way I see that, though, the whole paying of dues thing, it's like, if you're a young kid and you've never had a job, then that makes a lot of sense. Like paying your dues, understanding the value of, doing a good job and all that sort of stuff. I remember when I had my internship, I was like 27, I think. So I'm like, yeah, no, I've paid my dues in life. At a ripe age. Yeah, I paid my dues in life. I've had jabs. I know how to work hard, and I did. And I'm like, you know what, fuck that. Like, I'm not paying my dues anymore. Like, I want to skip to the shortcut here. And that's kind of controversial in the mixer world. And I paid the price for that too, by the way, because like I received a shock to the system when I was assisting with certain people, just because I wasn't ready to handle the personalities, shall we say?
Yeah.
The personalities of the artist. I've always been the artist, but I've never really been in the other seat for another artist at that point. So it was an education. So there's a lot to be said for paying your dues in that regard. Yeah. I mean, you're gonna have to do it one way or another, right? But I find it interesting, the whole the whole construct of working in a studio and that climbing that hierarchy ladder, right, to get to it. It's a different ball game now.
Yep.
As long as you know what you're doing, and you can be valuable and you can not be a douche, like that goes a long way.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think it's the reason why the ladder or the point system has been the industry standard. God, I hate that word. But
I know you do.
How you doing?
I do too.
Yeah. But I think it's because, well, this could be a whole nother episode. It's like, because I have my bone to pick with the word producer and how loosely it's used, but
good.
I'm not sure if I'm ready to be a producer yet, because people should understand is that producer is a song coach. In other words, producer does not program the 808s or the bass drops, or he does not mix the snare. He shouldn't really give two shits about the snare. The only thing the producer should care about the snare is when it's played and how it's played.
Yep.
It's sound engineers or mix engineers' job to figure out the sonic. It's ultimately it's drummer's choice to pick, like, okay, I'm going to use my Tama bell brass for this song.
Right.
Producers shouldn't really, if it's not complementing or supporting the song, I don't give a shit which snare you're using. The only thing I care about is how you play it and when you play it.
Yeah, man.
Most importantly, why you play it.
Yeah, totally. I mean, there are certain people that can do both and somehow pull it off well, but I'm with you. I think, like, I feel like you should be focused on the task at hand, which is not necessarily in, like, worrying about the sonic aspects of things, but just getting good performances, getting authentic takes and facilitating an environment for the artist where they feel comfortable to bring out their best stuff.
Exactly.
That's why Rick Rubin's kind of the man. Rick Rubin is kind of the man, as his track record would show. He's got some great, like, little tidbits that he shared as far as, like, helping with writer's block. And actually, this is a good one for people who are stuck with writer's block. Basically, he said in an interview that he would give his artists homework like they were in a recording session, right? So if you find yourself in a recording session because you want to be in the studio for some reason, if you have like a shit ton of disposable income and you want to book a studio these days and you want to write your record there and you happen to get writer's block, what he offered was this little homework assignment that he would give his artists, be like, hey, listen, there are, 3 lines in this verse that need to be due by the end of the week. Do you think you can find one word that you love in these 3 lines by tomorrow? It's just like super, super simple homework, right? And that takes the pressure off. It's just kind of like, yeah, no, I can totally do that. I can totally find one word. And, and again, what's cool about that is taking that action. What's cool about it, though, is that it will probably lead to a snowball like type effect. It'll probably just lead to more ideas.
Yeah. That is very true. And I think we could probably crunch out another episode about like the roles of the recording, or who's a producer, who's not, kind of episode later on.
Sure.
But I want to go back to when you mentioned that this engineer guy that you spoke to spent 6 to 8 hours per song, and that's kind of like where I want to go next, where it's like these gigantic projects two that come to mind, where it's like, okay, everyone's super involved in this, starting from the producer to every single member in the band. One, and with the common numerator that both of these albums took a long time to make. Number 1, the Metallica's Saint Anger.
Mm-hmm.
Number 2, Def Leppard's Hysteria. Now, in my books, Def Leppard's Hysteria is nothing short of perfection, and I think the price that they paid to make that record, both financially and time wise, and Rick losing his arm,
right,
which was not due to the record. He just but then again, like when I think of Saint Anger, it was a therapy record, but like how both of those albums were crafted, like they were done part by part, where it's like, you're doing this, I don't even know which song it's going to end up into, or what's going to come after, what's going to come before that, and yada yada.
Mm-hmm.
But like, why did Hysteria succeed so insanely well, and Saint Anger became like a dumpster for metalheads to blame their shortcomings on?
Well, I think because Def Leppard crafted real songs. No, not to be a dick, but but like, that's the thing. There was real craft to it. Whereas, like what you were saying, you're saying that like both camps, the Def Leppard camp and Metallica, were just focused on like separate parts and not knowing where they were going to go. Was that both of them?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, this is just a guess, and I love Metallica, but the way it sounded to me when I first heard Saint Anger, it sounded like to me like Saint Anger, the song, was one of the only complete songs, in my opinion. You know what I mean? It sounded like a song. It had a start, it had a middle, it had an end. And a lot of the other ones just seemed like jams that were kind of, sewn together. You know what I mean? It's like, this part kind of fits with this part, and let's just kind of put this part here because that's what we're doing now. And it didn't feel like an organic kind of flow to me, at least. I don't know.
Yeah, you could not have said it better. I think that's exactly. Well, I don't know. Like, I think both records were about the band's survival, but just in a different. Like, Def Leppard was like, how the hell are we gonna cope with the one-armed drummer? How the hell are we gonna top the success of Pyromania, along with like the other like self-doubting, because they didn't have Mutt Lange available when the actual recording began. So I think they started with Mutt Lange, but he was not, it never went further than the writing or demoing phase originally. and then they worked with Jim Steinman. And I just recently read that Joe Elliott has those Jim Steinman era tapes in his vault. And who wouldn't want to like hear him out? You know, I've heard the first Def Leppard record. It's not perfect. If it's like, you know, if, you know, it's like just for the fans, I would be curious to hear like how different the approach was. But now I kind of lost myself in a thought there. But with like Saint Anger for Metallica, it was just about getting to know one another again. But at the same time, like when you're trying to like work out some egos, the whole album to me just kind of sounded like an ego trip, where it's like, we're not gonna write a good album, we know that, but we're just gonna fucking write it anyways.
Right. Well, that kind of seems like to be plaguing how it the whole sounds. Yeah, I mean, it kind of sounds like that. It's kind of like this is a therapy session, which, you know, like that's great, but I just feel like the songs could have, you know, used a lot more time for development and frankly quality control, you know, like
CC.
The only one that the only song I remember is Saint Anger and maybe The Unnamed Feeling, I think, right? Like those two. But even still, there was something, I don't know, and maybe it was also the mix too. Like there was kind of a lifelessness to a lot of the songs. Like there wasn't a lot of it didn't feel like it was breathing or moving, you know. It just kind of felt like kind of flat.
Are we slowly getting into the Saint Anger snare?
No, I'm not mentioning the snare. We all know about that. And you know what surprised me is like when I first heard Saint Anger before the singing, I'm like, is this Slipknot? Like that's the immediate response I had because of that snare. Like I thought it was almost mixed by Ross Robinson, and not to knock Ross Robinson. But I think I really enjoy like his the rawness that he captures and all this stuff. Like he captures that aggression so amazing. So it kind of sounded like a tame Ross Robinson.
Yeah, there's actually the song Some Kind of Monster. There's an alternative version of that, which is it's in a slightly higher tuning, like a E flat versus a C, whatever they used on the, and that was mixed by Randy Staub, who did Black Album, Load, Garage Inc., and, you know, like,
right,
who's like in my view, like one of the guys, like if you try to do what Randy Staub does, you will always fail, guaranteed. But he made that song with the same like clangy snare, but when it's mashed into the rest of the set with the compression, because like Randy Staub, he always has such a like a ringy snare in there, but no one ever complains. They just sound so fucking huge. And it's like, yeah, there's probably more ring in like Nickelback's older Right Reasons album than there's on Saint Anger. He just knows how to tackle it, you know.
Right. Just how to dress it up and fortify it with some sturdy sonic walls.
Yeah. It puts a nice hat on it and little flowers on the side, and I don't know what the fuck he does, but Randy Staub's the man. Yeah, that he is. That would be interesting to hear him remix that entire album. It'd be really interesting. He'd probably do it justice, and Justice for All remixed by Randy Staub. That would also be, here's some actual bass. Right. Well, yeah, I mean, there's that. But dude, the guitar tone on that was so amazing that like, oh man, you almost didn't need any bass, you know? Yeah. I don't know. Like I'm too emotionally invested in that record to have a clear
objective opinion about it as far as like the sonics, but them shits was my jam when I was a kid. I think I was 10. Yeah, I was 10 when I first heard that record. So that was the one that got me air guitaring at the foot of the bed for way too long before I got a real guitar.
Yeah. The tennis racket Hetfield.
Yes. The tennis racket Ulrich.
Yes. Ulrich. Should we move on to our closing argument, which I nobly named as "What's the rush?" With the songwriting, kind of like forget all that we said so far. Why rush it?
Right. And well, to start things off, I don't think you should ever rush anything. But I do think that you should start and make quick decisions so that you don't lose any momentum. That's what's most important, at least in my book when I'm working on stuff. But yeah, rushing will always lead to mistakes, at least for me. So I don't think you should rush ever, but making quick decisions, just deciding on something like let's just record it. Let's hear it back. If it sounds bad, well, now we know. Now we can move on. We've actually saved a lot of time having taken this quick action. You know what I mean? And
yeah.
I mean, as far as like working quickly and getting stuff done quickly, I can only speak from my own personal experience with this too. I mentioned on the previous podcast that I work for this company called Song Glorious, right? And long story short, we write songs for people like based on their own personal story. But the thing is, we have to write these songs in 3 days. So it's super intense. So it's forced me to really, streamline the workflow, make it as efficient as possible, make sure that there's nothing in my way that's going to cost me time or anything like that. And what I've discovered is just because that kind of pressure of meeting a deadline has helped me to pull stuff out of my noggin that I never would have if I had a lot of extra time to do so. I don't, it was just kind of like, I would have to make a quick decision and all of a sudden it was a stream of consciousness that I just started writing, just rode the wave. And then before I knew it, I had these ideas and it was like, cool. I mean, the other thing that's cool about that too is that there were clear boundaries in place for me to work within, which I think is super important too when you're writing songs. It's really important to have some clear boundaries set up. And that's what I do with my private students, where it's just like, look, we're going to do this little exercise. It's going to be this tempo. It's going to be this time signature. It's going to be this key. We're going to use this one scale and we're going to use 2 chords. Let's make music with it. And, it's like, it's the freedom of limitations. It puts you in a box that you have to fight your way out of creatively, and you'll be surprised at what comes out. You just will. Cause it's not even you that's doing it. It's like your subconscious that's taking over, and just being like, I know what to do. And, that's why I think it's so beneficial to just even try it. Like, you might not agree with any of this, but I really just encourage you to try it out just to see what happens, because I think you'll be surprised.
Hey, I think our brains are completely fried right now, as you can probably tell. We should probably leave that on a positive note. Now, before we go, I do want to say that I've spoken to a few, I may have said it on a last episode, but I have spoken to a couple of cool guests that have agreed to make an appearance in our podcast, and hopefully we'll get them soon. So any closing words before the guillotine drops your head clean off?
Yeah, I mean,
okay.
Just okay. When it comes to songwriting, don't overthink it. Just take some actions, trust your instincts, and if it's a crap song, it's a crap song. Just move on, do another one. I mean, songwriting is a skill like anything else, and it's only going to get better the more times you do it. So that's kind of the point of me saying, like, get used to making quick decisions, because you can always go back to the way you were doing things. That's not like, I'm not saying never do that, but I'm saying try this just to kind of see what happens. Like, just treat it as an experiment, you know, like if it's an experiment and it goes bad, it's like, it's okay. It's just an experiment, you know? So I will leave it at that.
Yeah. Your instincts, you must trust.
Exactly.
That was a poor Yoda impression.
I got it though. No, I got it. I got it.
Yeah. Try, you must.
It almost sounded like Schwarzenegger, like doing an impression of Yoda.
Try, you must. Yoda. Try, not try. All right. Things are getting wacky, and things are definitely going to get more wackier in the near future when we come back with some more Ugritone shitcast. We've been a potential failure, but if you're still here, thanks. I will see you guys next time when we have some more to talk about, and I don't know when this is coming out. Hopefully in the weekend, so you can actually enjoy your weekend. Over and out from me, over and out from Aaron.
Indeed. Thank you for listening.
Sorry.
Oh, yeah, I got to end this. Oh, and one final thought. This podcast seems to be best served with alcohol, so keep that in mind. All right. See ya.